The movie starts on Christmas Eve, and John McClane, a New York police officer, travels to Los Angeles to meet his estranged wife, Holly, and his kids. Holly's gotten a new job opportunity in Los Angeles in June of that year, and she insisted on taking the chance despite knowing that it might affect their marriage. She packed up and relocated, and since then, there's been a strain in their marriage, which they both hoped they would get resolved during this Christmas visit. On that day, her company, Nakatomi Cooperation, had just closed a deal and decided to have a party to celebrate that and the end of the year party. As John arrives at the airport, he meets his talkative limo driver, Argyle, who admits he's never driven a limo before, and he keeps talking and asking John about everything in his life and his visit. Although John begs him to keep shut, when he refuses to pause his speeches, John eventually tells him the details of his failed marriage and the reason he had visited. When they arrive at the building, Argyle gives John his card, telling John that if he settles with his wife, he'll bring John's bags to the building. But if his wife rejects him, John should return to the limo so he could drive John back to the hotel. Before their arrival, one of the workers, Ellis, tries to ask Holly out for dinner, but Holly reminds him it's Christmas Eve and she has a family. Holly also calls her kids and asks her nanny if John is called. When her nanny says no, she hopes that John actually took the flight because she wants to see him too. She tells her nanny to prepare their spare room for John. When John enters the building, he checks for his wife's office, and while checking the computer register, he realizes that she didn't use their surname at work and that she's using her surname, which angers him. He arrives at the party where he meets her boss, Joe, who takes him to Ellis as they anticipate Holly, who has visited the restroom. Holly eventually enters and sees him. She hugs him. He asks her where he could go to clean up, and she takes him to their bathroom. There, he tells her everything that has gone wrong in their marriage, asking her why she had to use her name at work. They can't reach an agreement now because she keeps claiming that her relocation didn't cause any strain in their marriage, but it only destroyed John's belief in their marriage. She gets called by Joe to give her speech, and she excuses herself from John. Meanwhile, a terrorist group led by Hans Gruber attempts to take over the building. One of them knocks out the security, and they block every elevator and window leading to the 30th floor where the party's being held. In the bathroom, John calls Argyle to find out if he's still there. As they talk, the terrorist group cut off all the communication in the building. John and Argyle do not know why their conversation stopped, but they hope nothing is wrong. The terrorist group breaks into the party with guns, and Gruber speaks to the workers. He asks for Joe, and when he eventually sees Joe, he takes Joe into another room where Theo, one of the team, is working on a computer. The noise of the workers when the terrorists arrive alerts John, who realizes that there's something wrong and brings out a gun. He follows Gruber with the gun and watches the negotiation. Gruber asks Joe to enter the code and access the company's computer. Joe wonders what they want to do with the computer, and Gruber explains that they do not need the information on the computer. They want the $640 million of untraceable bearer bonds in the company, and the code is one of the things needed to access the money. Joe tells them there are 7 different security levels, and even if he gives them the code, they can't access the bonds. However, he won't provide them with the code. Gruber kills him immediately and tasks Theo to break the codes. Gruber intends to break and take the bonds before calling security to announce a hostage situation and escape as a terrorist. Theo gets down to business, considering he can break all codes except the 7th one because it can't be broken externally. John watches all of this and thinks of what he can do. He sees a fire alarm and alerts the police, and when the team finds out, Gruber sends Tony to find John and kill him. However, John kills Tony and takes his gun and walkie-talkie. He writes on Tony's body that he now has a big gun and sends the body manually through the elevator. The body arrives and some hostages see it and scream. Gruber doesn't want the hostages to realize something has gone wrong with their plans, so he tells some of the teammates to inform Carl, Tony's brother, that his brother is dead. John watches these and also writes down the names of the terrorists he gets. He uses the walkie-talkie to contact the police, and the phone connects to the Gruber too. At first, the police assume it's another prank call since the fire alarm was said to be a prank, but he keeps convincing them that something is wrong. While he does this, Gruber figures he's on the rooftop, so he sends his team, including Carl, to find John. Carl insists that he'll kill John by himself, so as they get to the rooftop, they start a shootout. The shootout notifies the police about the incident, so they call police officer Powell to check on the building. John escapes from Carl and the others and hides in an elevator shaft. Gruber also calls Carl back because he knows the police are on their way and they need to get the safe broken before the hostage situation can begin. Reluctantly, Carl and the others leave John, who eventually escapes to another floor. John watches as Powell arrives at the building. Gruber informs Eddie, his teammate at the security, and Eddie disguises himself as the security officer to convince Powell that nothing is wrong. Two terrorists also attack John, but he kills them. Powell walks out of the building and reports that it was a fake call. To call Powell's attention back, John breaks the window by throwing one of the bodies out of it. He also shoots at Powell's car repeatedly, so Powell calls for reinforcements, and reinforcements arrive. Gruber's plans are already going badly since he wants to be done with the theft before he starts a hostage situation and poses as a terrorist. He also receives a call from John, who informs him about the two other dead men that he's killed. John also checks the terrorist's bag and sees their detonators. Powell calls John again, and John gives him the account of everyone who's been held hostage in the building. However, when Powell's superior, Dwayne, arrives, he refuses to believe John, claiming he's just a strange man speaking on a phone and could even be a member of the terrorist group itself who's messing with them. So he assembles some officers and asks them to break into the building. Gruber doesn't care about the police, as his target is the FBI. So he scares the officers by shooting at their lights and burning down the truck they intend to break in with. News coverage starts recording the situation, and Argyle also finds out through the news. He connects to his telephone and could tap into their conversations. Gruber intends to scare the officers more by burning their cars, but to stop that, John attaches some of the detonators with him to a chair, throws it down the elevator, and burns an empty floor in the building. Dwayne doesn't support this, so he calls John and asks John to leave the cops to do their work, but John refuses. Ellis is tired of sitting and expecting a miracle, so he leaves to speak with Gruber. He asks to negotiate with John and get back Gruber's detonators and claims to be John's friend. Gruber asks him to put his life in line for the negotiation, and he does. Gruber calls John and reveals his full name. John is scared that Ellis must have talked about his wife, but Ellis says he only said John was his closest friend. John knows Ellis may get killed if the negotiation fails, and when John refuses to release the detonators, Gruber kills Ellis. Gruber speaks with Dwayne, claiming he's a terrorist, and his demands are the release of some of his comrades and a helicopter that should take him and all the hostages away. The FBI is called, and Gruber asks Theo for an update regarding the codes. Theo informs him he's on the sixth one and reminds him that he can't cut the seventh one, but Gruber says America will happen. Gruber leaves to find their explosives and comes in contact with John. He pretends to be one of the hostages so John won't kill him, and after a conversation between him and John, John gives him a gun to protect himself. Gruber eventually turns the gun against John, that is, until he finds out that the gun is empty. John turns to kill him, but Carl arrives with some of the terrorists and another shootout occurs. Although John kills two more terrorists, he also gets injured. Gruber takes the detonators and returns with Carl. The FBI commands that the electricity grid be cut off for all of the households around. Just as the electricity is cut off, the seventh code becomes externally disabled due to electricity failure, just as Gruber is planned, and they access the bonds. The FBI speaks with Gruber, informing him that his comrades have been released and the helicopter is arriving, although they plan to send a chopper and kill the terrorists instead. Gruber also plans that when they escape, he'll set the rooftop on fire, and before the company finds out about the missing bonds, they'll have disappeared entirely. And before the company finds out about the missing bonds, they will have disappeared entirely. John also gets weaker. He calls Powell to tell his wife some things in case he dies and also apologizes to his wife. As he resigns to death, he walks toward the rooftop and sees that Gruber plans to detonate the entire building. The FBI also sent a chopper to kill the terrorists on the rooftop. John calls Powell to inform him of Gruber's ambush, but he's attacked by Carl, who's come to avenge his brother's death. And after a battle of fists between them, John eventually kills Carl. With Gruber's plan in fusion, he starts evacuating the hostages to the rooftop. But a broadcast by one of the news channels reveals McClane's children, and he realizes John is Holly's husband, so he takes Holly as a personal hostage. The other hostages run to the rooftop, but John goes to warn them about their explosives, and they return. When Gruber finds out that they're coming back into the building, he orders that the rooftop should be blown off and the FBI agents die in the attack. Theo goes to steal a truck so that they can escape, but Argyle knocks him out. In the building, John confronts Hans, who holds Holly as a hostage. John asks him why he wants to blow up the building, and Hans explains that he wants to plan their death too. because when a person steals that much, he'll surely be caught unless he's presumed dead. Upon hearing that, John drops his gun and starts cracking jokes, which Holly understands, and when Hans is distracted, he reveals another gun and shoots Hans. Hans is about to fall off the building, but he hangs on to Holly's hand, intending to fall with her. John comes to his wife's rescue, removes her watch, and pushes Hans down. All the captives are released, and the McClanes kiss each other. When they come out, John sees Powell and hugs him. In the middle of their reunion, Hans stands and attempts to shoot at John, but Powell kills him. Following the event, Argyle drives out to take the couple, but the newscaster who had revealed McClane's kids tries to get words from them, and Holly slaps him. She enters the limo with her husband, and they kiss as the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel to get notified when we post our next recap.